Cool. Well, thank you for those of you that have stayed, for staying to the end of a long 2 days worth of content. It's been really, really, really valuable. And actually, thank you very much, Jordan, and the Sales Enablement Summit for inviting Alevon along. Again, I've learned a lot from the last 2 days, and hopefully in this penultimate session, I'll be able to share something back for you that will be equally of value. What I will say is, again, over the last 2 days, there's been a lot of content around sales enablement strategy, the development of such, et cetera, and I'll absolutely hands up. In Alevon, we are currently working through our sales enablement strategy, so we've got a lot of work to be done. I'd say that we know that we have a journey that we've got to undertake, and we're at the start of that journey. However, there are component parts in terms of being able to deliver productivity and productivity gains for our salespeople that I do want to be able to highlight, because we're undertaking that journey. So I'm maybe the slight dark horse in the context of the 2 days, because I actually come from a data and analytics background. And what I'm going to be talking about is our artificial intelligence program in the context of augmenting sales and marketing activities and how we've deployed that at Alevon, right? Just really 3 key simple parts to the content that I'll present. Firstly, why did we elect to go with an AI program? Why should anybody elect to go with an AI program? Secondly, where are we in terms of that journey? And then thirdly and finally, the so what. If you implement a program of this nature, are there any real business results that you get from it? And so as a data and analytics person, I am going to close this presentation with some numbers, right? So that's just to give you a little bit of a heads up on that. Okay, what do I need to do? Right, here we go. Thank you very much, Axel. I thought at one point over the last 2 days that I was going to be literally the only person in the room that had pushed a personal photo up against my bio, clearly coming across as the most self-indulgent and certainly the most vain person in the room. So thank you, Axel. At least there was a photo of you. I know that you kind of made it funky because it was on the back of a mobile device and you were smiling, and it was... So you definitely outshined me on that level, but here you go. Yes, I am clearly the most self-indulgent person in the room, you can see. And that's obviously the lasting impression that I want you to take away when you leave this session today. My title is Head of Sales Enablement and Productivity at Alevon Europe. And again, I've held that title for about 8-9 months. This is not to say that we haven't been doing enablement activities at Alevon. I think the role itself is an opportunity to bring together a number of those existing activities and then to also start about some of the gaps that we have, right? So whether it's content management or learning management, working in a lot more of an aligned and matricized way with marketing and L&D, bringing all of that together, there's a clear opportunity for us to do that a lot better at Alevon. And that's great. And actually, in terms of my, my background, I've got my role kind of divided into 2 parts. So principally from a technology or technical aspect part, I look after CRM and marketing automation. Then I also have within my team a commercial analytics division. So they look after deal and business case development, as well as sales performance reporting, and of course, lastly and most importantly, the AI piece in terms of our delivery. I have a corporate career, almost 20 years in length, of delivering capabilities within financial service organizations, a good chunk of that at American Express, and then over the last 5 years at Alevon. I'd say the one key strand that's common across both those financial service companies is that both of those companies are typically more expensive in marketplace, right? So if you hold an American Express card, you know that you can't actually spend with it anywhere, right? So the one key thing that I've learned over my 20 years is how do you effectively sell on value? Because you can't sell on price. The companies that I've worked for, we don't sell on price. So how do you effectively sell on value? And so therefore, on that basis, how do you set up the right sales operations, the right sales enablement, and of course the right data and analytics capability to help those organizations? The bit that I really love and that really makes me tick is the right here, right now, actually. So increasingly there is a kind of convergence of data analytic capabilities against business operational data. And I think the most representative example for me on that front is the world of CRM had been, in many respects over the last few years, de-linked or divorced to some extent from business intelligence. That's coming together in a much more meaningful way. And I think that's really exciting, because what it's doing is it's bringing a number of those techniques into the business operational data space and really beginning to leverage the power of data analytics for improved decision making. What I think is really interesting in this space is it's not the business intelligence function that's drawing operational data to it, it's the other way around. So Salesforce's acquisition of Tableau is a really key move in that space of saying, you know what, we've got all of this operational data. If you want to get better at making smart business decisions with that operational data, well, guess what? As Salesforce, we're going to classically buy in a few other companies that help our clients get better at doing that type of activity. So that's what makes me tick. Let's talk a little bit about Elavon. We're a leader in global payments. We do payments processing. We have offices in 11 countries across the globe, though we're licensed to provide payments processing across 36 countries. What that means is we provide other businesses with the ability to accept credit and debit card payments, well, any electronic type of payments, but typically credit and debit card transactions today, both in-store and online. In the UK, our key competitors, the marquee brands, are WorldPay and Barclaycard. You naturally will have heard of them. Amongst them, they own about 75% of the processed volumes in UK market share. As Elavon, we're ranked about number 5 in the UK, and we have about 8% of that market. So again, a lot of growth opportunity for us. Our capabilities extend in terms of the businesses that we serve. They extend from small to medium-sized businesses all the way through to multinational enterprises, although our footprint has traditionally been in the SMB segment. The reason that that's the case is because we've built up a lot of our operations and the footprint of our operations through partner organizations. These are external partners, other banking organizations, other financial institutions, et cetera, as you can see up there, 550 odd partners across the globe in terms of financial institutions that help us get our footprint out into market. So we don't have much brand recognition. We're not a WorldPay. We're not a Barclaycard. And so therefore we rely on partner networks to be able to bring us into market. And that's a key point. And I'm going to come back to that actually at the end of the presentation, just to give you a little bit of an additional flavor around that. So why has Elavon invested in an artificial intelligence program? The deployment of this actually began in late 2018, although the story predates that by a couple of years. And the story at its heart is really simple. It's a story of a company that had not been invested in for some time, got a rapid degree of investment through the course of 2016, increased its capacity, its sales organization almost overnight, and in the process shot itself in the foot because it was somewhat wholly unprepared for that level of growth. And that's exactly what happened at Elavon, right? That's the story of Elavon from 2016 through to 2017. Rapidly changing industry. At its heart, it's consumers shifting their consumption patterns away from cash over to electronic payments. That's great. That's wonderful. For Elavon, up until 2016, that had been driving almost near double-digit growth year over year. Fantastic. Our parent company is US Bank, wanted to capitalize on this, particularly in Europe, invested in us heavily in 2016, and our sales force grew by almost 25%. Again, almost overnight. What we didn't do was peripherally and proportionately invest in other parts of the organization so that they could grow at the same pace. And what we didn't do is, guess what, have a decent sales enablement strategy in place for us to be able to be smart about the way that we're growing, the way that we were growing, as opposed to being reactive. And probably our sales enablement strategy has been and continues to be a little bit reactive, right? So that's exactly what we did. We grew at a very fast clip overnight, got very excited about it, had a huge amount of capacity increase in terms of our sales organization, but in the process, lost track and lost sight of what was important to us. And that was the main challenge. Add in the additional pressure of targets. So when you get an accelerated amount of investment, naturally, along with that comes an accelerated expectation of returns. Put that in, and you know, as Axel has very clearly alluded to, that's your quarter pressure. If you've got that pressure coming through, what happens? People lose focus, they're not supported, they're not provisioned, they're not empowered. And two things came out the back end of this. We lost productivity on a by-person ratio from a sales perspective, and we also lost focus on some of the areas where we had been strong, which is a retention of existing customers, existing levels of customer service. And that led to a greater than normal degree of churn. So leaving 2017, our story was not a pretty picture. Our total portfolio had been in contraction by about 3%. Not a totally dire picture, because that was the book of customers had reduced by 3%. Revenues stayed flat against 2016, so not a totally dire picture, but certainly a picture that warranted a rethink in terms of where we were at and what we needed to do, right? Investment followed by reversed performance, that's never a good story. So, do you need to have a cliffhanger moment of that nature to be able to put forward a business case that allows for investment in productivity activities, and in this instance, in terms of an artificial intelligence program for improved productivity? And I'd say no. So obviously, as you've heard over the last couple of days, there's a number of household brand names that are utilizing artificial intelligence as one of the component parts within their technology stack to be able to improve productivity, to be able to drive that overall sales enablement journey. For me, and again, there's been lots of definitions over the course of the last couple of days over what does sales enablement mean, what do we do as practitioners, et cetera, et cetera. For me, it's really a case of how do we get the appropriately skilled person into the appropriate interaction set, right? So the right person with the right message, having the right conversations against the right target at the right point in time. How do we accelerate that, and how do we make that happen? And hopefully that resonates across everybody. Maybe it's an overly simplified definition. It's probably not as pithy as some of the definitions that you've seen over the last couple of days, but actually that's what we're trying to do. The good thing about this ethos is that it translates across both in-person and digital, virtual, all of these different channels. And actually, when you think about all of those different channels and the complexity that comes across a multi-channel environment, it's natural that capabilities such as artificial intelligence provide a really strong value add. Ultimately, all AI is doing is helping support improved decision-making. It's just taking away some of the factors and some of the challenges and some of the decisions that we potentially have to make. It's just improving some of that. What have we elected to do with AI? And it's more towards the bottom, right? So again, I'd say at the top of that diagram, enabling the right person with the right message. Again, if you talk to a number of the partners and vendors that are here today, they'll talk to you about things like artificial intelligence and how that can help organize unstructured data, whether that's in text or whether that's verbal, et cetera, et cetera. So that process of packaging up, organizing and packaging up unstructured data, that really helps in terms of providing coaching tools and coaching techniques. The bit that we're using at Enablement is artificial intelligence in the bottom part of this diagram. How do we utilize AI to really help intelligent segmentation, and in the process of driving intelligent segmentation, get the right deals in front of the right salespeople? What we're trying to do here is really link back to a really simple Pareto principle. If I've got my reps out there undertaking sales or account management activities, how do I make sure that 80% of their effort goes against the 20% of opportunities that are the genuine sweet spot, right? Don't equitably spend your energy against all 100% of deals that you've got, or you've got kind of your vision over. Don't do that. Try and identify the 20% where you know you're going to get a higher conversion ratio, you're going to get more money, and actually you're going to hit that sweet spot and that bang for buck at a much more accelerated rate. So how do we do that, and how do we do that effectively? And at Enablement, that's the job of AI, is to be able to provide a view of that 20%, and how do we get to that? Okay, so I wanted to very quickly, and I know this is probably the wordiest slide, very quickly go through a generalized, simplistic model of artificial intelligence. I'll kind of position this as being my opportunity to demystify AI, right? So this is my thought leader bit. So clearly, if you're going to take any photos, now's a good time. Again, I'm, as I said, wholly self-indulgent in that respect. So feel free. What I wanted to talk here, and again, just this process of demystifying AI. In terms of a generalistic model, AI is obviously founded on data. There has to be a data input into your artificial intelligence model. Something needs to happen there with information going in. The process of that information, and actually right at the start of the workflow, that information needs to be organized, ideally into some type of desirable versus undesirable outcome. The more binary in many respects, the better. The reason being that once that information then goes into stage 2, which is being plugged into an artificial intelligence environment, what starts to happen there is the environment gets to learn about the information and starts to then, in a very predictable way, about what's a positive outcome versus what's a negative outcome. And it's those outcomes that help to then start generate predictive frameworks that can be utilized on an ongoing basis. Really, all we're doing then, the third part here, is taking current data and operationalizing that data through the AI environment, getting a predicted outcome, and then utilizing that predicted outcome. Because that outcome is going to say, here's the good stuff and here's the not so good stuff. Do something useful with the good stuff, right? When you feed that back in and you get an automation of the feed and you get some adjustments to the way that the system learns about the feedback of the data, and starts to organize that data in a way that's meaningful for the feedback loop. And again, self-adjusting feedback loops, that's really machine learning. And then when you get into the space where the system starts to adjust its own algorithms, almost like a human neural brain pathway, that's deep learning, right? And that of course, is your kind of Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terminator end of the spectrum, which is fantastic because at the end of the day, we still know where the on-off switch is. All of this is great, and we're not utilizing it to any extent of that level of sophistication, but you can see it, of course, across a number of day-to-day applications, whether it's being able to observe your consumption habits and in the process serve up recommendations for you, whether it's speech analytics, and again, being able to understand and recognize whether a certain word or a certain vocabulary is hitting, the absolute expression or not. It's that whole process of information being treated in a slightly binary manner to be able to generate predictive outcomes so that the system can learn from that. Of course, Google's or Alphabet's recent venture into deep learning, and again, the very decisive beating of a Go world champion is again a very compelling case in terms of how deep learning artificial intelligence is becoming much more prevalent. In the B2B space, Visa are using AI for fraud checking, which is great. And again, this is another example of a company that's utilizing artificial intelligence and utilizing that as a mechanism by which to drive value into its partner network. So Visa isn't necessarily, it's obviously got all of the information and the transactions flowing through its schemes platform, but they're utilizing that information as a mechanism by which to go back to the issuing banks and give them a view around how they can better handle fraudulent transactions. And of course, our beloved Salesforce, they have Einstein embedded into all of their products. And again, what we're trying to do here with a number of the capabilities, I think Salesforce is certainly moving forward at a pace in terms of how do you build that in. Again, that wonderful view of operational data and making that very meaningful. At Enablement, so what we're doing, we've got historic sales and retention data. We've identified wins, the good stuff versus losses, the not so good stuff. We've pushed that through the system. The system understands. We've then gone, right, let's get our current list of customers. So for example, our existing book of customers. Let's take our SMB portfolio, and we're doing this once a month, pass it through the system so that the system can then say to us, well, this is the good stuff and this is the not so good stuff. Focus your effort and attention on the good stuff and then take some campaign-based activity. I would love to say that we're at that end of the model. We're not. We're at this end, so anything that comes through, we then feed back, and at least we're doing some feedback in terms of understanding value from the overall program. Did we build it or did we buy it? We actually went with a company called Lattice. Forrester, in terms of their most recent wave report on customer data platforms, puts them right at the top in terms of the leading space. They have got a huge platform and actually a huge amount of data. They've recently been purchased by Dun & Bradstreet, so they have access to a significant data set. You probably heard, for those of you that were here yesterday morning, both Werner and Charlotte talking about intent and intent signals. I think Werner was talking about intent signals coming from Sixth Sense. Lattice do the same. They're able to really kind of get into that space of web scraping and being able to identify where certain businesses are taking certain actions, provide that intent data over to us so that we can, again, start to react against that. And that's one of the capabilities we haven't explored yet, but we will do. And ultimately, again, here's another household name right at the bottom of the slide. The reason I called this one out is, in many respects, that's exactly what we're trying to do. The success that Dell has had with Lattice in terms of reducing the number of deals that have to go out to salespeople, but then improving the productivity per deal basis, that's really what we're trying to do as well. So fantastic that Lattice have achieved that. They're a really good partner. They've been really engaged with us. We're probably a smaller company against the roster of clients that they have. And yet they take a very well-proven customer success management model, and that's what they're working with us against, which is great. What I will say, in terms of the build it or buy it, a couple of things. For us, outsourcing to an external partner such as Lattice is probably about a third cheaper than trying to build it. If you've got data engineers, I don't know, an Amazon Web Service platform, data scientists, et cetera, even a small team, it's actually quite expensive in terms of being able to resource that out. So that's one of the first things. That's a pro for us in terms of us being a smaller organization and needing the flexibility and the dynamism and being naturally constrained by cost. The con is that we don't necessarily really know what's happening. It's their black box. We feed it with data. It gives us some output. It gives us a lot of statistical information around that output. So we've got a high level of confidence in terms of we're getting good stuff from it. We don't necessarily know what's happening under the bonnet. And that's the challenge. What I will say, and one of the key learnings that I'll share right now, is I do think, and having been to a number of data and analytic conferences, having talked to a number of peers, what I do think is that for us as a company, let's say Elavon is a mid-sized company, for us as a company, it's the right strategy. Let's start with an outsourced partner. Let's start small. Let's prove the use case. And actually, if we ever become a Citibank in years to come, wonderful. We'll then go and hire a whole cadre of data scientists and what have you. But we're not there. We're not that. So, an outsourced partner is what we need for the moment. This one I put in because this is from marketing and it's a complex picture. But I do think what this expresses, and the key point that I wanted to bring out on this, is that actually in the workflow, Lattice and AI is at the bottom of the workflow. In terms of that technology stack and where it sits on the streaming of effort, it's at the bottom of this the downstream part that it plays. And that's deliberate, and again, that's appropriate for us for now. We could have Lattice upstream, so right at the top where we've got different types of lead generation activities. Yes, absolutely, Lattice, or in fact, any type of AI program can play a very, very, very valuable role there. And in time, we'll get it to play that role. But right now, Lattice plays a downstream role where it actually looks at the information that we've got. Let's push it through. Let's score it. Let's understand it. And then let's make deliberate actions on the basis of that. We're trying not to bite off more than we can chew. That was clearly one of the learnings from trying to accelerate our sales organization. And, I'm allowed to, on a quite regular basis, use the expression crawl, walk, run, and nobody laughs at me because that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to crawl at this stage. When we get to a point where we feel more comfortable with our competence in this technology, we'll start to accelerate some of it. So let me just close off. I've got a couple more slides here, really just to talk through the numbers. This is the first slide. This looks at our prospective sales. We utilize Lattice in Q1 to be able to run effectively a pilot prospective sales program. What we did was we took about 1,000 recycled leads. So these were lost deals that were sitting in Salesforce. So we took 1,000 of these lost deals and then recycled them back into Salesforce, having scored them through Lattice. Lattice is, as an AI environment, obviously is output oriented. so tries to simplify the way that you see this output. And Lattice has a very simple scoring spectrum going from A through to D, where A is high probability of good stuff happening, and D is low probability of good stuff happening, right? So in this context, I've simplified it. High fit means those deals that Lattice had told us, or the AI environment had told us, would be at the strongest probability of having a high conversion rate. Low fit is those deals that would have a low probability of an accelerated conversion rate. Right? So the high fit stuff is good for us. We deliberately hid the scores from our sales agents when we put it into the system. The reason being that we wanted to do a blind test on the AI environment. And that was really important for us because we wanted to isolate the causality of AI as opposed to it being kind of blended into its AI plus its sales skills plus its time plus its all of this good stuff. We just wanted to isolate AI and the impact of AI. We took a deliberate decision to also skew the mix of leads in favor of high fit. The reason we did that is because we wanted sales agents who knew that they were participating in a pilot program to feel that they were getting more positive interactions on a more regular basis. They didn't know if it was a high fit or a low fit, so they had to obviously equitably put their energy against each deal, every single interaction. But we did want them to feel like they were making progress and it was a positive pilot program to be supporting, right? And this happened in Q1. As everybody knows, Q1 is a busy time of year. So asking our sales agents to then do this on top of all the Q1 stuff, it needed to have a little bit of a motivating factor to it. Results were really compelling, and actually, I'm just going to come and point to it. In this bit here, this is all about really data quality. What Lattice had classed as high fit, and the benchmark there being low fit, what Lattice had classed as high fit really turned out to be genuinely a much better conversation, and those leads were being qualified, and this is actually, I guess, in the Salesforce vernacular, conversions over to opportunities. There was a much higher percentage of conversions over to opportunities from leads that were in the high fit range as opposed to those that were in the low fit range. In fact, 2.5 times more, which is certainly very compelling. In terms of closed won, again, less impact here because in this space, you're really talking about the sales skill set, right? So an AI program is going to do less here within the context that we're using it until you, of course, you get into coaching tools and mechanisms and all of that good stuff. But still, some value because we're clearly passing through deals that are qualifying and accelerating and moving through the pipeline at a much more accelerated rate. So fantastic that we're getting a conversion rate coming through there as well. I certainly felt very comfortable and honestly very, very pleased with this. You've got to remember as well that this is fundamentally a phone-based cold call campaign against customers and deals that we had spoken to previously that had previously said, no thanks, Elavon, you're too expensive. Right? So the fact that we're going back to them and having a conversation, and the fact that AI has told us, spend your time there, and that was coming through in terms of proof of concept was really valuable. The second use case that we used, and we've been doing much more of this actually in the recent past, is using artificial intelligence, Lattice, for preemptive conversations. So what we're trying to do here is get ahead of a potential customer being at risk of cancellation. Can the AI environment, once it's been trained, give us again, it's a call list, give us a call list that allows us to have a conversation with a customer potentially 2 to 3 months before they're actually going to cancel. And this is certainly an interesting use case, right? And again, all of the stuff that's happening down here in saved cases, this really is ultimately the skill set of the customer account agent that's on the phone, because this is an elegant conversation. You're getting on the phone with a customer that you don't necessarily know if they're really at risk of canceling. You're taking some confidence and faith that an artificial intelligence system have said, you know what, go have a conversation with this customer. They may be at risk of canceling. You need to have a conversation where you get into potentially a value-based conversation. You can't lead with a value-based conversation because you don't want to reduce your margins or give away too much right from the outset. You somehow want to probe and understand, is this customer genuinely at risk of canceling, yes or no? And if they truly are at risk of canceling, what type of a proposition can we go back with so that we can save them, drive the additional loyalty, et cetera, et cetera. What we were finding, and we did this previously at Elavon, utilizing internal-only data and with a very rudimentary statistical analysis model. So that was the old way of trying to do at-risk cases versus the new way, which is, of course, the Lattice scored. What we were finding is that there were a lot of false positives in terms of the old way of doing things, right? So actually, about 84% of the cases that we had flagged out to our account execs weren't really at risk. They just come through the system as being, looks like this customer could be at risk of canceling, but weren't really at risk. We still have a huge distance of improvement to travel, but in terms of lattice, at least now we're getting to a point where, it's near enough 60%. So 6 out of 10 are still not really valid cases, but it's a significant improvement versus where we were. So again, it's a much better use of account managers' time when they're having that conversation. And again, when you get into saved cases, so these are businesses that are still, from those that were genuine, valid, at risk, businesses that continue to transact 3 months down the line. Again, the improvement there is again very compelling. Does this stack up at a macro level? Not yet. So are we seeing any significant improvement in terms of our overall churn rate at a European level? Not yet, right? I think for 2019, having implemented this, having gotten proof of concept, a few results, I think that's really compelling. The big challenge now is how do we scale this up? How do we make this work in a much more effective way, get people bought into it, drive the usage of it, and really accelerate the program? And I'd say that's one of the principal learnings that we have. Firstly, in terms of where our AI program has added value, across that sort of ethos of right person, right message, right opportunity at the right time, definitely right opportunity at the right time, those two pillars, it's really serving those two pillars, which is fantastic. Artificial intelligence, machine learning adoption, that is a kind of a classic sales operations issue, right? So there are compelling results here. There's clearly a what's in it for me message that can be taken over to our sales and account management agents. But in a classic way, they're busy. They've got other things to do. They don't necessarily want to engage with this program. There's a lot of selling internally that we need to do to be able to make it happen. And again, we're coming back to that push and pull mechanism of what carrots do we need to use? And of course, critically, potentially, what sticks do we need to use as well, right? We need to get value from this. Yes, it's a third cheaper going at it with an outsourced company as opposed to building it internally, but it still costs money. So I've got to start proving real value from this on a scalable basis. And to do that, I do definitely need interactions across all of the areas of the company, but in particular with sales and account management. We do need to get into a multi-channel communications strategy. So everything that I've talked about here is really phone-based. We're going through the program of building out our marketing technology as well. So I'd say as we get into the second half of next year, I think we'll be in a much more solid position where we're looking at a multi-channel strategy that helps drive a number of those interaction points. Again, I think a lot of that's been talked about today in terms of the one-to-many versus the one-to-one. We've started with the one-to-one interactions. What we really need to do is actually develop out our technology stack to facilitate the one-to-many and actually flip between the one-to-many and the one-to-one as needed through the process of these use cases. And finally, as we saw with Visa, and again, within the context of our partner network, if we can do this, and we've started to experiment with this with Retail Merchant Services, RMS, who are a big provider for micro and small businesses in the UK, if we can start to drive value into their organization around AI and how AI can help us, help them, then that helps to develop our partner proposition as well. So that's good for us, good for them. That's it.
Right, questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Very interesting. How much time did it take for you to manage that project from the beginning to the end of that pilot?
We started off in August 2018. I mean, it took a little bit of time just to get everything in place, and I didn't even have any resource in the team for that at the time, right? The good thing is that. And this is the sort of the pros and cons part of it. The good thing is that you don't need to have statistical data science knowledge in the organization to be able to take advantage of that. You just need somebody who's comfortable with Excel, comfortable with analytics, comfortable with a number of those traditional analytic skills to be able to work it. The challenge is we don't necessarily know what's going on under the bonnet. So it took a little bit of time, and that's only because it was to some extent the the recruitment process, getting the right person in, getting them skilled up, et cetera, et cetera.
Great presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
Was this driven by sales as an initiative, or was it driven by you?
The business, we went and we talked to sales about it. And in fact, in terms of launching the program, we had quite a sizable workshop for a full day, had sales and account management leaders come in. So we treated it almost as any kind of workshop within that technology space, right? So if it was relaunching CRM, I would have a big workshop. So we did it on the same sort of proviso. Let's bring all of the sales and account management leaders in. Let's make sure that we understand their viewpoints, their needs, their requirements, et cetera, et cetera. Let's get them excited so we can start that change management journey and all of that good stuff. We'd made the decision, I think, to go with it. I mean, the decision had been made before any of the bad stuff had happened. We were already working towards that. The kind of 2017 business performance just helped accelerate that decision.
I love data, and I think big data is going to give us so much more power, as you've shown. It does require people putting data in. So how do you get them? How do you get Salesforce to use the CRM?
And
is there an answer to that?
So we've got a lot of work to do in that space, for sure. There are some markets that are using it better. And so no surprise, in UK and Ireland, actually some of the output that we've had in terms of utilizing that data for business decisioning has been a lot better than some of the other markets. But that's okay. I think, what that does is it helps shape our journey and helps shape the story. So we can utilize UK and Ireland as positive practice markets. I wouldn't say best practice, right? As positive practice markets. At least there's practice. So UK and Ireland, at least there's practice. Perhaps we can take it to some of the other markets.
So have you done anything specifically for a pull towards getting that data in and accurate? And is there any activities that you've done around that?
I mean, that's a much bigger question, so we can connect separately on that one. But yeah, I mean, I think so to date, I would say our broad strategy around CRM and CRM adoption has been around. I think it's appropriate again for where we're at now. Has been around building integrations into our CRM platform. So trying to build the feature sweeteners into CRM so that there is provision there for anyone to interact with CRM. But that doesn't necessarily drive that engagement. I think what we've not been so good at, we've done the technology, we've just not been good at selling the so what in terms of the value around that technology. And actually, to a certain extent, there needs to be a little bit more of a top-down message. So it's, again, going back to management to say, you sponsored this, you had a really great positive voice at the start of the program, let's go back and explore how do we get that voice refreshed, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a little bit of that we need to work through. Anyone else?
All right, then.
Cool.
Thank you very much, Arup.
No worries.
Okay, on to the final session of the day. Luckily.